Welcome to the Influencer Show with your host, TraySean Ben Salmi.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Influencer Show, where I interview people who can help influence the way you live life in a number of different ways. I'm your host, Seven, and today we have a very special guest for us. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to listeners and let them know a little bit about you.
Hi there, Trey. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. So I'm Lisa Avery, and I'm a positive psychologist. So I work with the science of optimal human functioning, which is really exciting for me because human potential is what I'm very most passionate about.
That is absolutely amazing. And why don't you share with us why you do what you do?
Why I do what I do. I think for me, on a personal level, it took me quite a few years to come to the realization of who I was, what I'm about, what's important to me, and that which drives me, really. And I guess so much of the passion that I have behind helping people find that is because it took me so very long. And I think that if you can get a sense of who you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there, you're majorly empowered in this life. So I like to help people ask and answer these kind of questions by using some of positive psychology, the research, the science behind what it means to live a happy and meaningful, fulfilled life. Because I guess at the end of the day, there is no greater question than, how can I find happiness and meaning in this one life?
Yeah.
So that's what really excites me and drives me. It's seeing human beings really embrace who they are, embrace their greatness, and really learn the emotional and psychological skills to get to where they want to be.
That's actually really, really important. I think that's something that all people need to learn, like no matter what area they're trying to get into. Because then as a result, just being able to then help themselves get to know themselves better, then it actually helps them not only to just do things to the best of their ability, but also get better at many different things, such as interacting with others. And yeah.
Absolutely. I think you hit on something really crucial, and that is that the self-awareness piece comes first. I think, too many people go through life without having any idea of who they really are. And one of the first questions we ask are, what are your character strands? What do you do best? And there's this thing in psychology, which is a negativity bias of the brain. And it means that as human beings, we will automatically veer towards the negative. If you receive some feedback and you receive 3 compliments, but one area for improvement, 1 week later, I'm guessing that you'll be focusing on the area for improvement. That's kind of like human nature. And so I think because of that reason, human beings are great at telling you what they're bad at, but they're very uncomfortable in telling you what they're good at. And so in some of the work that I do with people around their strengths, it's really quite a powerful moment to see a person realizing, acknowledging, and then exploring ways to use their strengths, to the maximum. Because at the end of the day, for all we try to correct our weaknesses, mostly it's going to be a case that that's just going to make us mediocre. But if we can find a way to really leverage that which we do well, wow, I think that could take us to stratospheric heights, So, and I think another really interesting thing to say about that is sometimes a person's strengths can actually be overused to the point of weakness. So, for example, if a person's naturally very kind, if they're too kind and they don't have boundaries with other people, that can be a real source of frustration. So I think it's also really helpful when thinking about areas you need to improve, perhaps as strengths which are being over or underused. And that can come, that piece of self-awareness can be really powerful for people.
I definitely think that's so very true. And what would you say has been the biggest influence on you that you wish I'd known sooner?
I think, much of like what I've just been talking about there, I think the need to be authentic, the need to be true to yourself, I think it can take human beings a long time. It's because we have these 2 desires. On the one hand, we want to fit in, where we belong to the herd, we belong to the pack. I guess you'll know yourself from school days, everybody wants to belong, to have a little friendship group, to feel like they form a part of something. But the other desire we have, it's very different. And that is to be an individual and to be celebrated for our individuality. And I think, as you go through your sort of 20s, start of your 30s, you're very much finding your way and you're trying to reconcile these two very different desires. So I think if I could have gotten to the point earlier of feeling like I was being the truest version of myself, I guess that is the only thing I wish I'd known and wish I'd been able to embrace sooner. That being said, Trey, I think we've all got to go on a journey, and some of our biggest challenges and obstacles, for me personally, I think I struggled with confidence for a lot of years. And I think had it not been for those struggles, I wouldn't feel anywhere near the desire that I do now to help other people overcome those struggles much more quickly. And I think, for me, that's the great thing in life. I really like helping people find that which has caused them the most difficulty or the most pain, because very often that is the area in which they are very, very empowered to help other people overcome this themselves. So yeah, I guess in answer to your question, I would have just liked to have known many years ago that it's okay to find who you are and be who you are. And if you can be who you are, I think the world responds to that in a very positive way.
I think that is totally I totally agree with that. And I think that's something that people are actually struggling with now more than ever, because like they're constantly, just like as a result of social media and just a host of other things, people are constantly looking for their identity outward instead of going inwards.
Absolutely, which is really important to get to know yourself. A lot of the work I do with young people, with schools and the likes, it's around this sense of identity, this sense of self. So, what are your strengths? What are your talents, your passions, your values? Get a really strong sense of who you are, because if you don't, the world is going to tell you who you ought to be. And really sadly, what happens is if people don't embrace who they are, there comes a point where they have a bit of a crisis in their mind, and they start to think, so who am I actually? I've listened to the shoulds, the have-tos. And in a lot of my coaching sessions, I get people in their 30s and 40s saying, I should do this, I have to do this. Well, who says? Who is the should and have to actually coming from? And I think it's really sad, but very true. Often these shoulds and have tos come from childhood, come from, norms that our parents, family, society have imposed upon us. And we've never taken the time to assess, is this really who we are? Is this really what we want to do with our lives? And that's why I'm really passionate about taking people on this journey from a young age. For me, the sooner the better. That doesn't mean that you'll come to a place where you have all the answers and ever after you'll go in one direction. I think, Trey, if you do things right, you'll be constantly evolving as a person. If there's one thing we know about human beings, it's that we have this innate need to grow. And I think we need to evolve, we need to change.
Definitely. I think that's actually so very true. Like, as soon as we break through one limit, we want to try and break through the next. And I think that's one trait that people are actually fortunate to have, because then it actually just keeps us constantly trying to achieve even more in our lives.
Absolutely, which can be a great thing, but it's a bit of a double-edged sword in the sense that this thing in psychology called hedonic adaptation, and it basically means that no matter what happens to us in life, however good or bad, we get used to things. Now, for bad things, it's great because we get that resilience. We become quite resilient. We get used to things quickly and we move on. For good things, when we achieve a goal that we've desired, we've been wanting to achieve for a long time, it means that very quickly, and I guess you get this with the people you work with, people are very quick to pass it off and, as you say, to think about the next thing without really savoring that moment and really savoring what that victory feels like. And goal after goal, well, that's great, but for me, it's more about growth, the general picture of growing in every aspect of life, rather than just the achievement of one goal after another. And I guess as well, it's really important to say that these goals have to be meaningful, and that's why it's really important to know who you are so that you can choose and set the goals which are really going to deeply and powerfully resonate with who you are on a deeper level. And I don't know about you, Trey, but I think so often when the goals just involve our own success, it's not always as easy to find the motivation to get there. But when our goals involve helping other people or making a difference to the world in some way, we suddenly have this incredible power and drive. And I think it's almost like we're blessed with this, I don't know, the stars align in a different kind of way as far as I'm concerned. And we just seem to have that extra motivation to go the extra mile because it can help another human being. Would you find that in your work too?
No, definitely, I totally agree with that. I think just out of sort of having a while, just having a goal that's bigger than you, it simply urges you to then show up every day. Because then instead of thinking like, oh, it's okay, I can do it the next day, you're thinking, oh, it's not okay because then someone else is going to miss out today.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So yeah. But I think it is really important that people have this vision to move towards, and a lot of what we do, it's helping people create that sense of vision. And there's a really lovely exercise called the Best Possible Future Self that comes from positive psychology. I don't know whether you would have ever heard of it. Maybe if I describe it for a second. Yeah, and basically for 3 consecutive days, you get people to imagine their life in the future. But what you do, have you heard of this? Yeah. You get people to, sorry, what is that, Trey?
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool activity because for 3 consecutive days, you get people to take 20 minutes each day to write in the present tense. The present tense is really important for the subconscious mind. It's the only tense that it's able to recognize and process. To write about the life they are living in the future like it's now, you know, and to make it as evocative as possible, as colorful as possible, because it's that vision that's really going to move you. It's going to push you. It's going to give you that emotion. And then once you've got that vision after those 3 days, you're going to feel an increase in motivation, more positive emotions. But also from that vision, you can then begin to break that vision down into goals. So what do I actually need to do to get there? Tangible goals. Because goals don't really motivate anybody as far as I'm concerned, but a compelling future vision later broken down into goals, for me, that's a different story. Would you agree? Do you have that experience of clients creating a vision? Is that powerful?
Yeah. Sorry.
Are you okay?
Thanks. Yes, I definitely agree. That's really important because then I was sort of just being able to picture it in the now and actually think of the things that they would be doing. They help you familiarize themselves with these surroundings, and it actually urges them to actually make the steps in the right direction to then bring that into reality a lot quicker.
Absolutely, exactly as you say, Trey. And the other thing is, you know, there's even research which shows that when a person just thinks about practicing something or doing something, you're making the same neural connections than if you are actually doing it. So just that mental practice in your mind, it's going to leverage your success when you actually come to do this. So I think it is really, really important that people get excited about this future and imagine this future in as much detail as possible. Yeah.
Totally, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
And how do you, what would you say people should do to stay motivated during moments of crisis?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say, and probably the biggest revelation for me through studying positive psychology, and this may come as a shock to people, but the first thing to say is that it's okay not to be okay. And I think it has taken me years and years to realize that. And the thing is, when experiencing negative emotions, it's been proven that if you can say out loud what you're experiencing as clearly, as articulately, as precisely as possible, just saying that thing out loud helps it dissipate, you know, and disappear so much more quickly. So the first thing to say would be, in a moment of crisis, it's okay not to feel okay. And if you can articulate that and say that, you can get rid of it much faster. So that's the acceptance of the negative. But the second thing is to say is that whilst accepting the negative, we can still work on that which is already functioning. And so it's this idea that there are 5 things human beings need to feel happy and to have a meaningful life. And that this comes from positive psychology. And what we need is positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. I'll just tell you really briefly why we need these things. So, you know, positive emotions, we need to generate these things because every time we experience a positive emotion, the mind, the brain literally becomes more expansive. We become more open to people, to opportunities. It's this real positive rippling effect that sort of spirals outwards. It really opens us up to the world. And actually, there's a really cool study which shows people looking at photographs, people who've watched comedy before looking at a photograph see the entire picture, okay? Literally, your peripheral vision is expanded. Whereas people who watch like a sad documentary, they see what is just ahead of them. And that is a perfect metaphor and a way of describing what happens. Positive emotions open us up to the world, which in turn create more positive emotions and make us happier. Negative emotions just make us see the threat which is directly ahead of us. Because if you think about it, when someone's coming towards us to attack us, we've got to have this tunnel vision so that we're ready to attack. So, at times of difficult times, like the time we're experiencing now, the first thing to say would be try to experience those positive emotions. Try to create those positive emotions. You're not waiting for these things to happen to you. You're going out into the world and you're trying to create what we call micro moments of love and connection with other human beings. And it's this thing in life, Trey, that all too often we think that love and connection, it's just about our families, our friends, our partners. But in actual fact, every time you meet another person, there's an opportunity to share a moment with that person that can really elevate everyone. And at this kind of moment, people need other people more than ever. Shall I tell you very briefly about the other four, or is that too much?
No, it's totally fine. Please do.
Okay, cool. So the other thing, at a time like this, I think it's really important to have the engagement part. Now, the engagement, it means when you're at flow with that which you're doing. So, for example, maybe when you're doing one of these interviews, you could be reading, writing, playing football, singing. It doesn't even have to be something creative. But the idea is that human beings really shine when they're in flow, when they lose themselves to the moment through an activity, which is neither too easy nor too difficult. It's like an optimal challenge. And in those moments, people can really grow. And it's also like a very enjoyable experience for people. So at times of crisis, besides accepting and expressing those negative emotions, look for ways to enhance the positive emotions, look for opportunities to have more of this engagement, more of this flow. The R is for relationships. So look for ways to enhance your relationships. And there's something really important that you've got to say here, and that is that the biggest predictor of successful human relationships, it's not just about holding the space for when negative things happen, it's also about sharing the positive with people that we love. And it's this thing called active constructive responding. So if I say to you, Trey, wow, Trey, I've just got a new job, I'm super excited, what would you say to me?
Congratulations.
Okay, would you say anything else? Would you ask me questions about the experience?
Yeah, pretty much just like ask how it went,
Perfect.
maybe like stand down, things like that.
That's it. It's exactly right. So the idea is that if you really, really want to connect in a powerfully positive way with people, you've got to be able to hold that space to savor the positive with them. Because too many people would say, oh, well done, that's great. And that
Yeah.
But the idea is you've got to help people really savor this experience. Like you say, so what was it like? Tell me about that moment, And these kind of moments you're creating with other human beings are very powerful. Positive emotions make human beings bond, really connect. And if there's one thing we know, it's that the quality of our relationships is the most determining factor of our well-being. So really cultivating those positive relationships. The last two things very quickly, the M is for meaning, and that's about, like we talked about earlier, accomplishing goals which are deeply meaningful to us. And almost always those goals will involve helping other people in some way, because human beings, we need that, we really need that. And the final thing, it's the A for accomplishment. And I think it's really important to say that no matter how big your goals are, you've got to divide them into smaller sub-goals to feel that sense of achievement on a regular basis, because that keeps the motivation going, doesn't it? Would you find something similar with the people you work with? That you really need to divide those goals into something smaller?
Because then as they see it something smaller and more attainable, it then doesn't seem as far-fetched, and they actually sort of like encourages them to work towards kind of thinking, oh, it's only 3 steps away. And then the next one's going to be 5, stuff like that. So it's like gradual steps in the right direction.
Yes. Absolutely, and I think that's really important. And again, to really savor each and every step along the way. I think, another thing that's really important is you've got to enjoy the process. I mean, you know all about this, I guess, because you've created so much already in a short period of time. And I guess if you didn't enjoy the process along the way, not only the goals, the victories, the achievement of those goals, but every step along the way, then I don't think you'd keep doing it, would you? It's the whole
Definitely not.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, to savor those little victories, it's really, really, really important. And again, like any opportunity to create those positive emotions by savoring these little victories, remember they elevate our minds, our bodies. People who experience more positive emotions generally live a bit longer. Optimists tend to have better health and also increased longevity. It's not to say that bad things don't happen, and yes, we should acknowledge that and speak about that, but at the same time, we can work on that we can work on reconciling ourselves with the bad whilst we're working on enhancing that which is good. And I think for me, that's the most important balanced approach.
Definitely, I totally agree. Thank you so much for sharing. I found that really useful.
Thank you. I hope so. Sorry if there was too much research theory there, but yeah.
And I really do urge that you listeners are taking notes. And if you had a megaphone and you could say one thing to the world that would have a lasting influence, what would it be and why?
That's a really profound and powerful question. I'm not sure if I have the greatest answer, but without a doubt, for me, the one word would be authenticity. Like, find yourself, truly, truly find yourself, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many paths you go down and find they're not your path. That's absolutely fine. For me, it's the question of don't give up looking for what really, really makes you come to life, what makes you feel alive on a daily basis. Because if you can find that, if you can feel that vibrancy, that energy, that zest, that determination, it's kind of like this whole thing that positive emotions, happiness, it can come and go. But a sense of meaning and purpose, it's something we can really, really hold on to. So it's that whole Simon Sinek thing of finding your why. And if you have your why, I think it's really much, much easier that you'll find the resilience, the motivation to keep going. So if I had a megaphone, I'd say, guys, you need to ask yourself these 3 questions. Who am I? Where am I going? And how am I going to get there? And if you need help answering any of those questions, there are so many resources, there are so many books, but it's worth doing that internal work. And as well, guys, I mean, this is going to evolve, like your sense of self, everything will evolve over time. You'll grow. We hope that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine too, But at any time, if you're able to keep a clear vision in mind about who you are and what you'd love to achieve, your sense of joy, the positive emotions will come through that, I think. And ultimately, it's going to be about helping and serving other people. In life, there are 2 things. There's self-actualization, becoming the very best you, and self-transcendence, going beyond that. And I think we need the 2 things. We need to become our very best selves, fulfill our potential, and we need to then reach out to other people using that potential to make some kind of difference, however small or however large that impact, But we need to feel that sense of purpose, because if not, why are we alive? Like, what are we doing here?
Exactly, definitely. And what would you say was the pivotal point along your journey, and what did it then teach you?
The pivotal point. I think there've been a few pivotal points, really. When I was 18, probably that was my first pivotal point. That was when I had an operation with my heart, and I was actually really lucky because it was something found entirely by chance. And I guess that was my first encounter with mortality and the realization, because the operation went on for double the length of time, and I was really quite lucky. And I guess at the age of 18, you sort of think, that you're going to live forever and you're untouchable. And I guess it was my first realization that our time on this earth is limited. And that was my first. At that moment, I didn't really access all this sort of information about who I was and what I was going to do. But I had a heightened awareness, more than any other kids around me, that life mattered. There was something that had to be done here to make it significant, I guess. So that was probably my first my first pivotal moment. But again, these things sort of happen very gradually. So that was the first thing that started me thinking, I guess. The second thing would have been, let me see, probably when I was age 33 and I did the master's. So I did a 3-year master's in positive psychology and coaching psychology. And I was like, wow, there's another paradigm to psychology, not just looking at what's going wrong, but what can go very, very right with human beings. And that in psychology was a major shift in thinking. So I guess that got me very, very excited about human potential. And it coincided with a bit of a difficult time in my life too, which really helped me apply this to myself. And when I started to apply this to myself, I thought, wow, this is a really, really powerful science. How can I use this with other people, with companies, with schools, and with individuals? And I guess that really got me going on this trajectory of where I am. And then the final pivotal moment, I'd say, because like I say, I don't think there's often just one pivotal moment, but a series that kind of take you to where you are when you look back, I guess was in the last 2 years, because I'd been living in Barcelona for 15 years up until that point. But then very sadly, I came back to the UK 2 years ago because my grandma was diagnosed with a very advanced cancer. And it was very unexpected and very sudden. And coming back here and being with her every day, with her and my mum, and looking after her at that time, once again, from like when I was 18, it really brought home the fact that now is the time to do what you've got to do, you know? And I guess that, and also to accept that in life there are going to be very difficult moments, and it's absolutely fine to experience that and to feel that. And I guess at this moment, I felt much more able to be open and to share that with people. And that really, really helped, because whilst it was a really difficult, bittersweet and an awful time at moments, being able to articulate that and say that like I couldn't have done 20 years before, I found a real freedom and a real peace and a real serenity in that, and an acceptance, you know. And at the very same time, I guess it made me more determined, because life passes so quickly, to try and do something that can make a difference, a positive difference to other people. So I would probably say, you know, it's been a series of moments rather than just one moment, but each of those moments have made me realize how precious and special and magical life can be. But if we want to have that kind of life, we've got to be the ones to take the action and to make it that way, I guess.
That is so very true. I think that's actually really important, because then as a result of being able to then go through those sort of like hardships and just like those moments, it actually then teaches you how crucial time is, and just how important it is to then spend time with either like loved ones, or just spend times that make you feel happy instead of focusing on the bad.
Absolutely, absolutely, Trey. It really brings it all home. It's inevitable that these moments make you think about yourself in your life, because time does pass very quickly. And I think it's really easy to think of, you know, just waiting for the next week, the next month before you begin. And you know, this idea that we're never actually ready for anything. You know, I think there are moments when we all have that incredible imposter syndrome and we don't really feel worthy and capable. But this idea that just put yourself out there with what you've got, with what you can do, and, you know, the world will respond in some way and you'll get that feedback. You know, you might not have the definitive thing that you want to offer or take to the world, but as you go out there and converse with people, chat with people, you will begin to find your path and find your way. And I think that's really exciting. You know, that the best kind of things don't really happen alone, but usually in collaboration with other people. And so to do that, you've got to reach out to people. And I think, you know, we thrive as human beings through talking, through speaking, through connecting, and those positive emotions and those relationships. So I think a great way to get to where you want to be is through connecting with other people who are doing things like you, who are doing things different to you. Because I think, you know, if you can keep that curiosity about what other people are doing, how other people got to where they wanted to be, then, you know, if you're inquisitive and you ask questions, you learn so much more.
Totally. I think that's actually really important. Just being inquisitive, like you said, it then actually pushes us to not only sorry.
It's okay.
It not only does it push us to just find out more, but it also makes us always want to see what is behind the story and sort of like dive deeper to the root cause of things, which then help us not only get a better understanding of it, but actually helps us to then pick out the things that we can then utilize in our lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I think we can learn a lot from other people's experience if we have the humility to, you know, to ask the question, well, the humility to understand that we don't have all the answers alone, and then the curiosity to ask questions. And I guess it's really important to have what we call the growth mindset. You know, and that means that, you know, we know that at any stage of life we can learn, we can grow. Our skill set isn't predetermined, you know, when we're born. That's very much the fixed mindset, but rather the growth mindset. And I think it's really good to know that your brain constantly evolves until the day you die. That means that until the day you die, you have the potential to change, to learn, to grow.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really exciting, because it means no matter how old you are, where you're at in your life, there is so much potential should you choose to seize that, you know, and to take responsibility for that. You can't wait for life and for circumstances to align. You know, you have got to be a little bit proactive in creating some of these opportunities.
Totally, because then, like, yes, it's good to like constantly like do things like affirmations, visualization, but if you're not taking the conscious decision of making those steps in the right direction, then it's not
Yeah,
going to just show up out of thin air. It's about just
it's
taking
not.
action, really.
Absolutely. It's this idea that hoping is great, but hoping is really powerful when you're both wishing for something and taking that action to get there. And it is really important to create that optimism, to cultivate that optimism, that positive mental attitude and everything. But at the same time, it's really important to say, you know, if you're having a bad day, you're having a bad day, and that's okay. There is no stigma to having a really, really bad day, and to expressing that. You know, there is such freedom that comes in expressing how you really, really feel. And I think, you know, British people in general, we're quite bad at expressing our emotions, but so much freedom comes with that. I can't tell you how much freedom. And it's that freedom that makes us feel quite happy, I think.
No, totally. Because then, as well, then doing so actually helps us to not only let go of baggage, but it also just helps us to actually be able to express ourselves and get clear as to why we may feel a certain way about a certain scenario.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And journaling's a really great way to do this. You know,
Yeah.
many people aren't fans necessarily of journaling, but writing, the act of physically putting pen to paper or typing even, it's just a way to release what you're thinking and feeling, and to begin to, you know, human beings, we need to make sense of that which is going on. We need to create a story around things to really understand. It's this whole idea that you only dream about things which are unresolved in your life, and that is our subconscious trying to piece together things so that we can make sense and move on from things. So if we're able to make sense of things, processing by speaking, by journaling, by writing, that's a real liberation. And like you say, you get clarity around who you are, what you're about, and what you want to do with your life. And, you know, it's that clarity then which can give you the determination and motivation to really go for this. Because if you're unsure, if you're not 100%, you know, it's unlikely you'll take action. It's that clarity, I think, which is the first step. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Totally. Definitely agree with that. And if you had to be another person for one day, who would it be and why?
That's a brilliant question. It's really difficult for me to even begin to imagine being anybody else. I guess, and not because I love myself so much, not for that reason. If not, it's really, really, really difficult. Because who you are, it's just so fundamentally personal to you, isn't it? I guess, like, at the end of the day, you are who you are because of your experience, your memories, your personality, your vision, your goals. I can't imagine being motivated to be anybody else, because I can't imagine necessarily getting in their headspace. If I had to be somebody, and sometimes I wonder what it would be like not to think so much, not to analyze so much. So maybe if I could be a person who, just for one day, just to feel what it was like, not to have this constant mental chatter and make sense of it. But I guess at the end of the day, it's just a human experience, isn't it? I'm sorry, that's probably a really boring answer. I should want to be like a super heroine or somebody really cool and fabulous. Maybe, but I guess at the end of the day, I don't really aspire to anybody else's life, for the fact that being human's being human. And no matter who you are at any given time, you're going to have joys and you're going to have suffering, you know, there's going to be everything in between. But I guess what I've learned is that if you're going to experience that level of deep joy and deep satisfaction, it's likely that you'll experience the other end of the scale too at times. Being able to embrace emotion is the whole spectrum of emotion. If you repress it, if you really disengage from it, then maybe your spectrum is like this. But if you embrace the good, the bad, the everything in between, it becomes broader. And that experience, I think, opens you up to life in a more vulnerable way, but it can make you much, much happier and have a deeper sense of meaning and connection. So in answer to your question, I'm going to have to think about that one and get back to it. But in the meantime, it's taken me years to kind of feel like I'm happy with who I am now. So I guess for now, I'm not going to swap.
No, I think it's actually really important, because then as a result, just being able to like stay true to yourself and show the authenticity that you simply own who you are, is actually something that's really powerful, because many of us actually like strive to be like someone else. But it's actually about maybe picking out a couple of attributes that you may like to then emulate into your own life, and then seeing how they can then work for you.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great point. And having role models, having people you admire, I think is great. And also, as you say, seeing their journey, seeing, you know, how they've managed to overcome adversity, I think that can really push you. That can give you that hope, that motivation. If they did it, then so can I. You know, in the last couple of years, I've surrounded myself by people that I believe are a few steps ahead of where I am. And just seeing what is possible if you keep going, if you persevere, I think is massively inspiring and exciting and important, you know. And I think the other thing is to say is that most people are willing, if you reach out to somebody, most people are quite kind and quite willing, you probably know from your own experience, to share a little bit of time and to share some thoughts and to give you a little bit of advice. It's not being afraid to ask, really, I think.
Totally, because like if you don't ask, then you don't get an answer. So it's just about something like taking the step, and if they say no, it's totally fine. Think of it as a simple like learning curve as to the next opportunity.
Absolutely. And that's what I really admire about you. You know, I know you're working with and reaching out to lots of incredible people. And I think it's fabulous that you are doing that and that you have the audacity to do that, because it does take courage to start with, I think, but you're doing such a great job with that. So yeah, congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
And what would you say are your views on the word legacy? And what legacy would you like to leave?
I think that's a really lovely question. I think it is a fabulous question that people don't really ask enough. It's this idea in getting comfortable with the fact that one day we won't be here in the same way. And what would we like to bestow upon the world? And again, it's really simple, isn't it? It's what is it that makes us a little bit unique, a little bit different, that we can leave behind for people to enjoy or to appreciate or to benefit from. And that could be absolutely anything. But again, it's getting a sense of what your strengths are, your talents are, your passions are, and how you can give them to the world as freely as possible. And of course, it has to be something the world appreciates or needs or responds to. I guess I would like to help people really get in touch with who they really are, to reach that deeper level of meaning, happiness, and fulfillment. I especially would like to do this, and I'm starting to do this with young people who don't have a very strong sense of identity, but for reasons that have been well beyond their control, disadvantaged young people who don't really have the strong family background, they don't have aspirations. So I guess I feel very, very strongly about helping people access those aspirations and gain the emotional and psychological skills to get there. So that could be with young people, it could be with people of any age, but I guess I'd like to see myself as a vehicle for helping people access who they are, what they're about, and gaining that psychological power and resilience to get to where they want to be. For me, I can't really think of another way I want to spend my life, you know, because at the end of the day, I don't see a point to living if we're not going to make a tiny, tiny positive difference to other people. I think that's how we thrive as human beings. So I guess I would love one day to feel that I had managed to do that. Yeah.
Totally. I think that's actually just so very key, because then if we're not impacting the world in a positive way, then
Mm,
like simply like what purpose do we have in our lives? And actually, like linking back to what you said about having a meaningful life, it's something
mm,
that we all strive for, that we all simply want to be a part of something that's bigger than us. So
mm,
then
yes.
by finding our passion and finding ways to impact others positively is something that all of us simply want to do. However, someone may be even unsure as to how they can then do so.
Mm, absolutely. And I think if you're unsure of how you can do that, you've got to begin by looking at your strengths, your passions. And there are great psychological tools that I can send to you for you to link so that people can begin. But a great place to start would be on the University of Pennsylvania's website. And it's a site called Authentic Happiness. And on this site, there's a questionnaire called the VIA, Values in Action Strengths Survey. And it's 250 questions. So it takes about 20-30 minutes, but it's really worth spending your time doing that, because by the end of that time, you get a breakdown of your character strengths, of your 24 character strengths in their order. And it's great to know your strengths, because your strengths also give you an idea of your values, what is important to you. And if you get a sense of your strengths, you get a sense of your values, you can begin to see what's driving you, what's pushing you, and you can think about how you can use that drive and use that motivation. So that might be a good place to start.
Totally, I think that's actually really important, because then as a sort of simply getting clear as to what you're good at, it then actually it actually widens your awareness as to things that are in alignment with your strengths, and that you could then find something that you're passionate about and that has multiple of your strengths in, so that you simply thrive in that area.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's really, really important and really motivating for people, really energizing. You know, this whole thing about positive psychology, it really uplifts people and empowers people. And so I think it's something that anybody of any age can really benefit from and enjoy. Yeah.
Totally, I definitely agree. And what would you say are the top 3 lessons that you have learned along your journey, and how did they influence where you look at life?
So I think the top 3 lessons would be, the first thing would be, it's okay not to be okay. And that means that inevitable difficult times and obstacles can be faced in a way that is less defensive, it's more productive, and it's more accepting of yourself and the situation. So the first lesson would be, you've got to accept that these negative emotions will always come and go, but they will come. And when they come, you've got to be able to handle them by acknowledging them, okay, and letting go of them. So that would be my first lesson, handling the negative. I guess my second lesson would be, human beings instinctively veer towards or focus on the negative. So if you want to create a life full of rich positivity and happiness, you've got to make a concerted effort to do so. And I think there are some great tools that can push you along the way. But I guess that, again, like I talked about earlier, that the framework to do that will be thinking about positive emotions, the engagement, relationships, meaning and accomplishment. So because our instinct is to go for the negative, what can we do to proactively create these 5 positive elements to our lives? And I guess the third lesson would be, it really is all about the process and the journey. You know, I think we fixate so much on the outcome, but I've seen in my own personal life, you know, people achieve everything they thought they always wanted to achieve, not really enjoying the process of all the years it takes to get there. And when they do get there, this realization of, well, this is okay, but it's not what I expected. So I think, you know, you've got to make your life, you've got to make your vision and make your goals into something which is going to inspire you and excite you on a daily basis. Because when you do manage to get there, it's going to be good. But that's not the most important thing. You'll quickly think, as you identify, you'll quickly think about the next step. So I think, you know, for me, it's accepting the negative and embracing that, finding a way to enhance that which is already working, and enjoying, really loving the process. And I don't really think for me there's anything else in life. It really comes down to these 3 things. And in order to do all of that, I think you've really got to know who you are and start to, discover that. And that journey is exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then I think those are like very fundamental keys just to simply living a life on purpose and actually fulfilling your passion.
Yes.
And could you share some advice with those who may be starting something brand new and then they're starting to give up?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely say, and it's really easy for me to say, and I'm still very much on that journey myself, but with persistence, if you persevere, great things will happen. I think there's a degree to which it's true to say fake it before you make it, in the sense that you've got to tell yourself the story of your future self. You've got to get clear in that vision, and you've got to be able to articulate. If you haven't yet achieved anything much towards that goal, you've at least got to very clearly be able to articulate that vision to the people you meet, to the people you encounter. And if you start to do that, you start to tell people, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, this is what I'm going to achieve, this is what I'm in the process of achieving. You're speaking about it like it's already happening, to begin to trick your mind into making this happen. I think there is a degree to which fake it till you make it is right, in the sense that by creating that very powerful sense of this is already happening, you're going to have that added motivation to keep going when you get a little bit of rejection here and there. And the thing is, at the end of the day, if you really want this badly enough, and I think you will want it badly enough if you think it's going to make other people's lives better in some way. Well, if you can really be clear on what it is you're going to be doing and how it's going to help people, you're going to have that increase in motivation. So anytime you're doubting yourself, get back to why. Why is it that you're actually doing this? And if you reflect upon that why for long enough, I think your motivation is going to increase once again.
Totally, because then simply as to finding the passion and the purpose as to why you started and sort of like the expected outcome, it then sort of like relights that fire inside of you to push for more.
Absolutely, yeah, beautifully put. I think it is exactly that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And could you share with the listeners where they can find you if they'd like to find out about any upcoming things that you may have?
Thank you. Absolutely. So they can find me at www.thepositivepsychologist.com. The Positive Psychologist is all one word. .com. Yeah, and I would love to hear from anybody if I can help in any way. If they have questions, yeah, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And I really do urge you listeners to go and check that out. And I'd like to thank you for coming on the Influencer Show today.
Thank you so much, Trey. Thanks for your time and for the show. And you're doing some great work, so keep it up.
Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And I'd like to thank you listeners for sticking to the end. And if you guys like to have the chance to apply to be on the show, please do feel free to email the email that should pop up on the screen. And I hope you guys have a great day. That's it from me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.